The Disrupt Education vlog can be found on YouTube. To hear it in podcast form, search Disrupt Education on any of the following podcast platforms: Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Castbox, Overcast, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or Stitcher. Welcome to this episode of Disrupt Education. I'm here with Alina Goffman.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, first off, a little bit about who you are.
Okay. My name is Alina Goffman. I am from Kharkiv, Ukraine originally. I grew up in Brooklyn and Chicago. I'm a college student at NIU, and I'm a photographer.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Well, let's jump in. Like, how do you juggle all three of those things right now? What does that look like?
Poorly. I'm very busy. Learning that balance is something I had to really kind of prioritize a couple years ago when I was first starting this, and I was working full time, and I was in school and life and all that kind of stuff. Being a young woman at this age is a very busy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it really came down to priorities, and it really came down to being willing to make the time for things. Sacrificing going out on a Friday night or going out with my friends for a dinner or something because I knew I had something else I needed to be doing.
So let's, Ukraine to the United States. What was that journey like? You can go family-wise and then education-wise too.
Okay.
So how was that?
So I came to the country pretty early. I was about 4 years old, 4 or 5. Moved to Brooklyn, Brighton Beach, which is a very Russian community. So my first introduction to this country was in a very Russian Jewish community, and the languages were the same around me, all that kind of stuff. We were just getting used to some slight cultural things. A couple years later, we moved to Chicago, and it was a struggle. My parents came here as immigrants. Their degrees didn't count in this country, and I watched my parents work for $4 or $5 an hour, making sure I had enough to eat and I had clothes to come to school the next day. And they didn't complain about how many hours they were doing, working 14, 15-hour shifts, doing what they had to do. And I think a lot of that mentality came down to me because that's something my grandparents have. My mother's maiden name is Rabota, which means hardworking, like in Russian, to be working.
Wow.
And it's kind of like the legacy in that side of the family. Like my great grandpa, worked until he literally dropped. It's just a very heavy mindset in that side of my family.
Tell me a little bit about then. You mentioned degrees that don't count here.
Yeah.
I've heard that from other countries. Very frustrating. What kind of degrees? And then they came here. Do you know at all?
I know my mom was like road construction or something. They're very practical, pragmatic degrees.
Right.
But my parents were looking at my options in that country as a woman, as a young Jewish woman in that country. They had the opportunity to bring me here, and that was worth them sacrificing their degrees and their education and what they had built up to that point in their life to bring me here and give me the opportunity to get that education here.
Wow. And so you graduated from Niles
North.
Niles North. Okay. What was the transition? So you came here when you were 4 years old, correct? What was it like? Did you start school on the East Coast and then come to? So how was that? What was that kind of like? If you want to take us through your K through 12 years.
God. Okay. So started school in a very Russian community. All my classmates spoke Russian, or if they weren't, they're so used to being in that kind of area that it wasn't a big deal, wasn't unusual. Then we moved to Chicago, in the middle of the semester, and I was crying. It was my nightmare. Oh my God, no. And I was at a school where everyone spoke English or Spanish, and then I came in with a really heavy Russian accent. I could read. I was reading a bunch ahead of my level, but the way I spoke, it stood out. And I definitely got picked on for that in certain regards, and I definitely felt kind of a cultural break in that regard too.
Okay. So then you're at NIU now. How did you choose that school, and what are you studying?
So for the first 5 or 6 years of my education in Chicago, I was in ESL classes. And even when I didn't need to be in those classes, reading level wise, I was close to the teacher, I was close to the other students in that program, and that's something I stuck in just to volunteer in after I left that. When I went to Niles North, I had a really great teacher, Mr. Sharma, who helped me with the college search process. I was looking at small liberal arts schools, looking at Knox, looking at Loyola, looking at NIU, and honestly, it came down to just being practical with money. Loyola and Knox were significantly more expensive. They couldn't give me money to really help me out in that regard. And NIU was close enough that I could work and knew I had my parents' support if I needed it, but it was far enough that I had my space to be a young adult and a young woman at that age, but I was also able to make it work financially, and it came down to that.
And you haven't gone straight through 4
No.
years.
No.
Tell us a little bit about that journey, because I think a lot of the listeners and viewers are, everybody thinks you go 4 years and you're done. I think that's the message we give to a lot of our youth, but that doesn't happen a lot. Tell us a little bit about like your quote unquote gap year. I'm just going to throw that in there.
So I very much had that mentality too. Like, you know, especially because my parents didn't have an educational background in this country. So when I was taking like the ACTs, I was like, oh, hey, I got a 26, woo. They're like, out of 30, what?
Yeah.
What percentage is that? Like, that was like an instance in my house. So, you know, I came into college thinking, cool, 4 years, knock out all my classes, get out of there, awesome. Because of the financial situation, I had to work full-time while I was in school. I started working in retail, and you know, working full-time in retail isn't just 40 hours. It's manager's call-off. It turns into 60-hour weeks with overtime, which is great because I could put down money for rent. I could put down money for tuition and ease that burden for myself and my parents. But I was missing classes because people were calling off of work. I was missing classes because I was tired. And it put me in a position where I honestly was doing really poorly. I was failing classes because I was working too much physically.
Right, right. And then somewhere along the way, you picked up this really great craft of photography. And now you're in the modeling industry. Tell us how that all came about, because you know you're English, you're studying in English to become a teacher, but then there's this other thing. How did that come about?
So, because I wasn't doing so well educationally or financially at the time in school, I took a year off to get enough money going so that I could pay off a year ahead of time in rent and focus on school and focus on doing what I had to do for my education. In that time, it was really hard for me not to be in school full time, not to be around my friends full time, and you know, focusing on making money. My family friend had a camera that he was trying to get rid of, and he passed along to me because I don't say no to things. And it started as something really kind of simple and just something I was doing for fun, and because of the amazing support I've had from my friends and the people around me and people who have found something in my passion, that I've been able to blow it up to something bigger.
And where has that taken you? That's taken you many places throughout the States.
Yeah.
Not yet worldwide, but I
Not yet
feel it's
worldwide.
coming. I
It's
don't know.
coming.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Tell us a little bit about the journeys and then the people you've met. What has that done for you?
Absolutely. Fortunately, at school, I had a lot of people and organizations who were supportive of what I was doing and were hiring me and, you know, giving me the finances to do what I had to do. I went to Dallas on a whim to visit a friend and see what could happen out there. And I went from having like $17 in my pocket to making significantly more than that, and knowing I was settled for the month. And I went to New York Fashion Week on a whim to see what was going to happen. I didn't even know a single show I was going to go to, and somehow ended up being like one of the best experiences I've had in the years. I'm driving from DeKalb, which is about an hour and a half from Chicago, to Chicago 4 or 5 days a week because someone's going to send me a message on Instagram and say, I need a shoot, or I need you to show up and walk on the show, or I need you to show up and do this. And it's just, I don't really say no to opportunities. So I'm kind of always out there doing that kind of stuff. So it's been great.
But somehow you've actually figured out how to balance school because, you know, that was a learning moment. All right, so I'm going to get into the guts of actually education, right? We all do it differently. You know, the big question of the show is usually, well, how, in your experience in education, in what ways would you change? And we'll take a look at like high school education, and then we'll take a look at the collegiate part. Let's go back into high school. You did a lot of volunteer work. We had a conversation before this and built a network there. Seemed like a lot of success came out of that, a lot of learning, even more than the classroom.
Absolutely.
With that being said, what different ways would you, if you could just redesign a high school or change something, what would you change?
I think, and you might like this, it really comes down to the teachers. You know, I went from the CPS program to then going to a suburban high school. And the difference in teachers' attitudes, I think, made some of the biggest difference in the classroom. You know, a lack of resources can very much affect that attitude and affect the kind of energy that a teacher comes to a classroom with. But I think when I got to the point in high school where I could say, you know, this teacher really cares about me, really cares about what's going on in my day, in my life, he knows what happened next week, the kind of teacher that this guy is.
Yeah, right, you know, let's
but that kind of teacher really makes a strong influence in a kid's life, and I wouldn't be comfortable doing a lot of things I do now if I hadn't been pushed to do them when I was 14, 15, 16, when you're allowed to make those mistakes and you're allowed to grow in that regard so easily. So I think it really comes down to having really dedicated, passionate teachers. My high school experience was great. I wouldn't change, I'm not saying I wouldn't change anything about Niles North, but, you know, if you fill a school full of Pankaj Sharmas and Peter Hostrawser, like, it's gold.
Let's go. The failing part. When did you really learn how to fail? I know I'm going to ask
Yeah.
about college here in a minute, but like, because that's huge. A lot
Yeah.
of our students want to be perfect in it, and it just freezes them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm included. Like, even some days in my life now. Tell us a little bit about like what were some of those early failures that you figured out you weren't gonna. It's not final.
Like in life in general, or like photography?
Anywhere you want to go.
God. Okay. Because in photography, I've had photo shoots where I've like walked away honestly in like tears because it just didn't work out the way I thought it was going to, or it didn't look the way it was going to, and someone paid me and people showed up, and oh my God, it's so stressful.
Yeah.
And like so many of those situations came up in high school when I was at a hoop club and someone didn't turn in their money or something didn't happen for the night of or something. Like life just kind of kept hitting me with working in retail. Life just kind of kept hitting me with these situations where just things aren't going to happen the way you want them to. And are you going to sit there and freak out, or are you going to get up and do something about it?
Yeah.
I'll sit there and freak out for a little bit, just like a little bit. And then you just have to keep moving. You have to do something. And, you know, there's been a lot of specific situations, but I think overall, like, that's something I watch my parents do. You know, there's a lot of situations where you think you're going to come to America and it's the land of gold and you just pick $20 bills off the street. And,
Where is that, by the way? I'm looking for that area.
Same. But I, you know, really watch my parents deal with the reality of the hard work that actually goes into it. So I think the idea of failure never seemed like a permanent kind of option for me because I knew that there was a bigger idea behind me even when I first got here.
Nice. So then you go into college, you bounce around, and then you're working hard, and then you take the year off, and you're almost done. You're in your last semester
Yes.
now? Congratulations. Tell us a little bit about what you like about the college realm, and then what you would change.
College is so different. And college is very different than what you think is going to be in high school. Because in high school, you know, you do get used to that personal approach with your teachers, and you do get used to your friends being around you all the time. And college is, they just kind of like drop you somewhere, like, have fun.
Yeah.
That
No, yeah. I that was exactly the way it was for me. It was like, what's going on here?
But like that's great. That's like the first like trial run for the rest of your life, because every time you put yourself in a situation where you just have no idea what to do, you kind of figure out if you have that sink or swim capability. My college experience was great, but I hesitated a little bit before I said that.
Yeah.
You know, college is an experience. I had to deal with a lot more adult situations. I was very sheltered in high school, we'll say, so I had to step into this with a very different understanding. You know, I didn't have anyone that spoke my language around me. My parents are further than I was used to them being before. I had to meet new friends and deal with new kinds of drama and working full time and school, and it was just a lot to balance, and I didn't really have those coping skills at the time. So I failed at balancing that.
Yeah.
I almost failed out of school. I was barely holding on to my job because I kept showing up late because of class, and I was at a point where I was, like, photography was like starting. It was cool, but it wasn't anything like dynamic. It wasn't anything that like was showing to me that I had a future in this yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was at a point where I was just kind of like, I don't know where I'm doing, and it kind of the understanding, the reality that that's okay.
Yeah.
Because everyone I reached out to, all the entrepreneurs, people I talked to, who I looked up to, had those moments. And they've been very personal with me in those moments and told me when they were struggling or told me when they were dealing with this stuff. So when I started going through it, this kind of wheel started turning in my head like, cool, this has to be part of the process. It doesn't like get stuck right here.
Yeah.
When I went back to go to college after my gap year, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I like the leap year. That
Leap
sounds
year.
like leaped a little bit. And,
Yeah. So the issue was I didn't realize, but I actually still owe the school $8,000. When I put my application back in, cool, I didn't fail. I don't know, just close, but like
Right.
I should be cool to come back in because of some mix up. I don't know what it was still, but I still owe the school $8,000.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up going back to school a semester later than I thought I would because I had to hustle and work my butt off and started charging more for photography and working full time and just doing everything I could to pay that off in addition to paying off my apartment to
Yeah.
get ready to come back to school.
Right.
And in that process where, you know, I was still academically a student, I was still, you know, had a place in that school, but I needed help in this financial area, or I needed some dates we moved around or anything with me, the school wasn't helpful in that regard. And the
Yeah.
same treatment I had when I was still, you know, going to class every day and when I was coming back was very different. I had to go to every office, from the financial aid office to the, like, whatever office I could find and say, can you help me get back in?
Right.
And people look me in the eye and say, nope.
Wow.
And you cry a little bit, go to the bathroom, go
Yeah.
to the next one. Can you help me get back in?
Yeah.
Nope. And you go to the next one. It's like a fairy tale, like, you
Yeah.
know, it's like a bad story, but you eventually find someone that has a little bit extra time, or, in college you get a student ID just like you do in high school, but that's very much like your label. You sit in front of them and it's like Z1111.
Right.
And finding someone to actually look above that number is a very kind of challenging thing in some regards.
Yeah. If you could go back and say something to yourself at age 16 about your educational realm or your path in general, what would it be?
I'm always going to say the same thing I was just telling your students. Like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, as, like, scary and freaking out and, oh, my God, this is so much. Like, a lot of these moments you're going to come up to are. Because these are new situations. From, like, 16 to, like, 25.
Yeah.
Like, it's just constantly
47. It just keeps going.
It's just constantly new situations that you just haven't experienced yet in life.
Yeah.
That's just the logistical part of it. You just haven't gotten to that crossroad yet. Logistically, not everyone, but majority of people just get through it.
Yeah.
Logistically speaking, I'm supposed to get through it. I'm a very emotional person, but, like, I just step back and look at the statistics and, like, this has to happen. Just like it has to happen. Cool.
Yeah.
And you just move on with it.
That's great. I mean, the smiles you put on, we were just talking with the crew here, and they were like, oh, yeah, I get it. And that's, I just love that. And it is so true. Like, you'll be fine. Except we put so many pressures on students, right? I think sometimes.
It's a really hard time for students.
It is very difficult. It is very difficult. It's a hard time for 47-year-old dudes, too. I don't know. I'm just teasing. Where can people find you? Where can people find your business? And then how can people contact you for some awesome photography, some awesome, let's just go into anything in the fashion industry? Like you're everywhere. So, yeah.
I appreciate that. So my Instagram page, my business page, photography page is Alina Supershoots, ALINA SUPERSHOOTS. My personal page is linked on there as well. It's private, but I usually will allow follows. If you do have questions about like fashion or photography, how to get started in that regard, like I love answering DMs and all that kind of stuff, let me know, please.
Awesome. Alina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
True disruptor of education, making things happen, not necessarily 4 years of college straight, but hustling and big network.
Thank you.
Creating a big network. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you on Disrupt Education.